It's just Jersey, man. We're a different breed. Place. Who doesn't want to win in Jersey?
What's up, everybody? John Forster here, right down from the barn. We're at episode 42. With me, as always, the greatest mind in wrestling. A lot happened in the last 2 weeks. Some good stuff going on. World Championship, USA. We're all on the gold. Great wrestling. A couple days. A couple other items in the news. We had to jump on to talk about it. How you making out, Eric?
I'm doing well. A little rainy day outside, just dealing with the remnants of the tropical storm, chatting some wrestling, so it can't be a bad thing.
Yep, I agree. So let's jump to this world championships. Let's jump right into it. What are your big thoughts here?
All right, I'll do the quick good, bad, ugly, and my last one will be kind of cool. And the good, another world team championship for the USA team. And I think we can agree, John, that wrestling is probably USA wrestling, at least on the freestyle side, is probably the strongest it's been since 88 and 92, back when you had guys like John Smith leading the team. In some ways, you could argue we have more depth now. When you think of the guys who didn't make this team, from guys like Yanni and Jordan Burroughs, I mean, these are guys who were left home and to win another world championship. I feel really good about USA wrestling, especially the freestyle side. So that's the good. The bad, it seems to be a sad tale for us, and that's 65 kilograms and 57. Once again, we're not qualifying those for the Olympic weights, especially 65. That's been our bugaboo, I think, for the last several periods now. And when you think of the amount of talent we have at that weight class, it really does baffle me. And now we know that's a very deep weight class globally. So, I mean, you got to take that in consideration. But again, that's kind of disappointing. And the ugly is, let's not beat around the bush, the Greco-Roman team, which really struggled, I think, at this World Championships. No real place winners. I think you had about 4 guys place 10th, maybe one who took 8th, but no real solid showing on the Greco side. And again, because I think our wrestlers, our team really concentrates on freestyle, I think that probably dominates most of the talent. But again, we have to point that out. And I think with the good, we'll also mention the women's team, although they weren't as strong as they were in the last, I think, tournament. And finally, the kind of cool for me is the 3, I would say, USA/international wrestlers. So obviously, our man Sebastian Rivera, which we're going to get into, Seabass taking a world silver. Micic for Serbia, who won a gold medal. And we forget about Miles Amin, too. He seems to get lost in the shuffle, but another USA collegiate wrestler who obviously for San Marino took a bronze medal. So I think that was kind of cool. So when you really think about USA wrestling, really dominate these world championships. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of good things with the wrestling, a lot of exciting matches, and just exciting championships. So let's talk about some of the good right now. Let's kick it off. Zane Rutherford gets the world title, silver last year. Gets it done. What are your thoughts on him?
No, he wrestled a hell of a tournament. He was pretty dominant. Obviously, he's bumping up to 70 now. The downside, obviously, you want to keep it positive because both him and Vito had incredible tournaments. Arujau, both taking gold. I'm trying to think. I think we had 3 or 4 gold medals. Those 3, obviously, we've got, which we'll talk to about David Taylor. The only downside, I would say, John, is we saw Kyle Dake really dominate at 79 several years ago at the World Championships. These are not Olympic weights. So the downside is both Zane and Vito are really going to have to seriously think about where they want to go. We'll talk about that in a second, but I don't want to take away from the wins. They're very solid wins. Zane, has really come along. I think he was the forgotten about man, 4 years ago. I think even though he was given Yanni, he took the spot a couple times from Yanni. I think he was never getting the respect on the team because of the rise of Yanni. And I think the USA wrestling community has really rallied around him. And Zane Trey just keeps going out there and plugging away. And that's the Penn State wrestlers. It's kind of like Nick Lee, who we know knocked off Yanni in the Final X. But no, I'm really happy for Zane. He's earned this. I think he's putting himself down as one of the more solid wrestlers of our generation. So very happy for him. The question is, does he go 65, which we assume he's going to do, and go after that 65-pound weight class for the kilogram weight class for the World Championships. But great win. And talk to us about Vito.
Yeah, I mean, Vito, what a heater, right? I mean, you look at a guy, I guess you're going back to say, let's let's go back. When are we talking? Maybe December, January.
Yep.
Lost to Sam Latona in a collegiate
Yep.
match. Nothing taken away from Sam Latona, bottom
Solid wrestler.
level All-American, right? But he lost that match, and since that time, this guy has been nonstop. Goes into NCAAs and kind of dominates a really tough weight class. Just look, really beating Dayton Fix and RBY, and then winning the spot, pretty, handily winning the spot and winning the U.S. Open, and now going out and winning a world title. I mean, this is a guy that just, from mid-season this year in the college scene, no one was really thinking of him to make the team, maybe be in the mix, right? Maybe get Final X, but no one thought he'd make the team, and goes out and wins a world title. What else could you say? What a great year he's been having.
Well, we talked about it when we did the preview of Final X, that I thought he was the hottest wrestler coming into into that Final X tournament. And obviously you don't want to place NCAAs necessarily at the same level of the international scene, but I just thought he was wrestling so well. And the cool thing, you mentioned Dayton Fix, who Vito defeated Magdevov, who actually beat Fix in the 2021 World Championships. That's when Fix took silver. So Vito kind of avenges that loss for the USA. So that was another cool thing that Vito did this past weekend. For me, you and I were texting back and forth during the championships, because everyone's just assuming he's going to go down for 57, and that's a loaded weight class, man. Which really bugs me that give Zane Richards all the credit in the world for winning the spot. He earned it, okay? Just like you have to give it to Chase at 79, which we'll get into in a second. But when you think about Suriano, when you think of the guys who are obviously what's going to happen with Spencer Lee, okay, if he's 100% healthy, because I know he's kind of focused for Paris this year. There's a lot of talent down there. I don't think Vito wrestles as well down there. I think when he bumped up to 133, he's long, he's got size. I think he'd grow in that weight. He doesn't necessarily have the bulk, but he's extremely athletic, extremely quick. And I don't necessarily say fast, quick. His movements in and out, I think are some of the best we've seen in the modern era of wrestling. Listen, maybe it's too early for Paris, because that's a big jump up going up to 65, John. But I don't know, there's part of me that says, and I know him and Yanni are very close, and there's a lot of, I hate to say politics involved with this, but you gotta admit it. But where does Vito go? Does he go down to 57? Does he go up to 65? Because we've talked about all these years that Yanni is our best hope at 65. He's the best international style wrestler. Between you and I, from what I've seen, especially over the last year, I'll take Vito against the field against anybody. Bulk this guy up a little bit, keep his strength, keep his speed with that length. I like him at 65. I don't know what you think.
No, I agree with you. I think it happens so many times. You see guys chasing the dream to go down a weight class. You saw it with James Green, when he went down and just went from a world silver medalist to someone that didn't look like he belonged on the mat. And I probably, I would rather see him go up. I think longevity, say he doesn't make the team, I think, there's a future here with him, right? In the next 4 or even 8 years for Vito. So I would rather see him go up to that 65 than make that cut and try to get down on weight. And I just think it'd be better to get him at that weight class. Let's turn the page. Our other gold medalists. I mean, in my mind, I think pound for pound number one in the world right now, David Taylor. What are your thoughts on DT taking out Yazdani again? What a great rivalry they have. Taylor's getting the better end of it, but he just looked amazing, right?
It's an interesting match, because early on, and this is what, if you are not a wrestling junkie like guys like us, you could get really confused watching some of these scrambles. Because early on, Taylor was in very deep on Yazdani. He had a little bit of a hip movement on the side, and there was a question of who got the 4. In fact, if you look at the scoring initially, I think they had Yazdani up, because I remember watching the match. I think it was up 5-1 or something like that. I could be screwing the points up, so forgive me. But they definitely initially scored it for Yazdani. Obviously went to the replay. You saw David Taylor had initiated the move. I think he came to his shoulder. Yazdani to his back, ended up flipping the score, and then Taylor kind of took over, and obviously getting the fall to, and I'm a little bit over the map here, but since I mentioned, I got to mention the fact that, let's go through the rundown of what Taylor did. I think he had 2 falls. two technical superiorities, and I think he had like an 8-2 win or 9-2 win. So when you talk about domination, this is almost this is like Poznanski in the state finals his senior year, where he just there wasn't even anyone who put up a fight. But that's a bit of an exaggeration because I think this finals was a little bit closer than we give it credit for. Like I said, if that score doesn't get reversed, it's a completely different match. But the bottom line is, outside of the one win that Yazdani had a couple of years ago, I think it was at Worlds. You're now talking about David Taylor, who's I think won 4 of the last 5 against these two. And they interviewed David after, and he basically said, listen, if it wasn't for me, not that he's arrogant, but if it wasn't for me, this guy would probably have 10 world titles. So to me, it's a great rivalry. I think there's a lot of respect there. I think there's a lot of respect amongst not just the two wrestlers, but even the fans of the Iranian fans who are, really support this guy. The question you got to ask with Taylor is the weight class as deep as some of the others? I think these two are obviously the class of that weight, but either one of them, I think, can compete almost at any weight class in the world. So no, I agree with you. I think right now Taylor looks invincible. I think he is raring to go for Olympics. Obviously we had a really, really nice match from our I'm trying to think. I'm losing my mind here. Our Arizona State wrestler who took bronze, who gave him a run at Final X. But I think this is David Taylor's weight. I think he's going to go into Paris, and I think he's going to be looking for his second gold.
I agree. I think he's I think he's the real deal, man. He's coming on strong. So let's go to Dake and Sidakov. I think that was a close match. I do think Sidakov is a little bit a notch above him right now. I think if they wrestled 10 times, maybe Dake will win 3 or 4 of them, right? But I do think he's very close. I think he needs to step it up a little bit. I'm sure that match gave him some feel and some things to look into. I think Dake, when you talk about the American field, as much as I'm a big Jordan Burroughs fan, I'm going to be rooting for him to win. I do think Dake's the strong favorite to get the weight class. Obviously, there's a lot of good guys in there, but what are your thoughts on Dake in Paris?
Well, you just mentioned Taylor's the best pound for pound wrestler right now. Obviously, Sadulayev is hurt, and we can touch on that in a second. Sidakov is nasty, man. And what I was impressed by Sidakov in this match is, if you know anything about him, his duck under is really, really nasty. He's very quick to get around to the side. I think Dake was trying to set that up. He was obviously going for the chest wrap. And listen, I'm not taking anything from Dake. Dake is one of the best to come out of this generation. We know that. But he's really going to have to protect his legs a little bit. I think he's getting a little bit arrogant with his strength in working that chest wrap. Sidakov wasn't having any of it. The way he cut the corner and caught the side and was able to finish his shot and get to Dake's legs twice. Dake's got some work here to do because, like I said, that's not even Sidakov's number one attack. That's his second attack. He beat Dake at his second attack. So the homework was done. We know how good Dake is. I think he rebounded nicely from the tough loss he had at the Olympics to win bronze. And he had Dake had a great tournament. The wrestler from Greece who had knocked off the wrestler who basically teched, and I'm going to butcher these names, so I'm not even going to bother. He knocks that guy off. Then Dake comes and knocks him off at the Worlds. He had the wrestler from Japan who's a tough out. Dake had a great tournament. I'll be honest with you, John, I agree with you. Sidakov's going to be hard to beat in Paris. I know he was a little banged up. He had a really close match. I think he had a 6-5 win early in the tournament. But when Sidakov's on, nobody's going to beat him. I mean, just reality. I'm trying not to be a homer. I don't see Dake's style taking Sidakov right now, unless he starts getting in his legs and he protects himself better.
Yeah, I mean, he's with the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. We'll see what they could do. I do have some hope there. But yeah, I agree with you. As it looks today, it looked like Sidakov had a little bit of a step up on him. Let's get into the bronze medalist. You talked about Zahid. Zahid came out, looked very good, had a good tournament.
Very happy for
bronze. Again, he's going to have to go through David Taylor. I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening, but great tournament for Zahid. What were your thoughts there?
Well, what's important about this is one, I'm trying to think, it was the one loss he had, he got a little sloppy, and one of his wins, he gets sloppy. He's a very gifted athletic wrestler. and he's probably one of the more gifted athletes we have in wrestling. He's just he's fun to watch, but sometimes it backfires on him. He gets that inside trip, and if it's not working, he can put himself in danger. And that's a really high risk maneuver in freestyle. But when it works beautifully. What this shows, I talked about earlier about depth of wrestling. No, I don't think he's going to come back and beat David Taylor to take the spot at 86. But when you think of the future, he's still a fairly young wrestler. I think David Taylor's got a few years on him. The bottom line is we're thinking long term for USA Wrestling, and I think winning that bronze medal, I think it's was that his first Worlds medal. Again, we didn't even mention Jaden Cox. He wasn't even here. So again, it just adds to the depth in wrestling today. And I think that's our strength for USA Wrestling. It's why I might even put it against those 88 and 92 teams, because here's a guy who probably not going to make an Olympic team in this year. And I think 4 years down the line, we might be talking about him going for a gold medal.
Yeah, and then let's talk Kyle Snyder. Kyle Snyder got the bronze. What were your thoughts on him? I mean, that young kid's an animal, man. I think that kid's really good. Kind of took him out pretty easily. But Snyder, I think he'll be back. I think he had, he lost before, we've seen that happen. We see always kind of shows up at the biggest stages. I do think that kid, 20
years old.
Sajalayev was hurt, but I think that kid is legit, man. I think he's good. And, but I do think Snyder's going to be back in next year to really contend for that gold medal.
Yeah, so Taz Ninoff, he actually, from what I understand, he trained with Sajalayev. He worked out at his club there. I think of their same background. So there's a lot of history there. I won't say it came out of nowhere. I think he was ranked in the top 5 going into this tournament, but I don't think anyone saw him winning gold. And the funny thing about this bracket, keep me honest here, I think Snyder, I'm going to look at this. I think Snyder and Sajalayev were in the same bracket on the bottom end, which is kind of, it's kind of odd that these 3 wrestlers are in and that's the oddity of international wrestling, the way they set these brackets up. Listen, I'm not trying to complain, but I mean, how do you have these 2 in the same? I mean, that's idiocy. And listen, we're only the US. The world has its own view on wrestling in general, but I don't know how the international community would want that. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't care if it's an open draw, fix the thing. I don't care. And don't tell anybody. You can't have these 2 at the bottom end, but I digress. I had to get that out of the way. The only thing that bothers me about Snyder now, John, and this is the second time we've seen this. We saw it against Sajalayev in the Olympics, getting in on his shot, and he's giving up the back exposure. And I'm not saying it's his folk style, because I have a very counter argument to a lot of people think we should abandon folk style and go 100% freestyle. I think folk style is our strength. I think it gets us in shape. It's improved our parterre. I think it just makes us better, more rounded wrestlers. So, but in general, his shots, Snyder you saw the low single he got on Sajalayev in the Olympics, and Sajalayev, got the turns, got the back exposure. Same thing here. He got in on a shot twice, and he gave up 2 4-pointers back to back. So yes, he got the technical superiority against him, which was shocking. You don't think of Kyle Snyder getting knocked out that quick, but it was really 2 moves. It was 2 throws. I'm just being frank. And I think he's going to go back to the drawing board. I think he'll be prepared for that. Maybe he was looking ahead to Sajalayev, and he underestimated the strength of this young 20-year-old, but that's twice now he's given up bad back exposure on shots. And I think, they're going to have to, he left Ohio State to go wrestle for Cal. Okay. And the idea was for him to go win a gold medal. And there's nothing wrong with that, but somebody's got to get a hold of him. This is something that's happened twice now, John. I'm rambling a little bit. But he's got to be careful on these shots. He's got to be a little bit more selective. And I think he has to be a little more defensive. Otherwise, we're going to see this happen in Paris. Or Jaden Cox is going to come knock him off. One or the other.
Yeah. I agree. I think, some things to work on, some things to fix. Let's talk about Mason Paris. He looked really good. Close loss in the semis, comes back, takes bronze. Found out 2 weeks ago. I'm sure he was training like he was going to be wrestling there. He wasn't sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, but, gets a call, ready to go. B team, be ready, right? Takes a bronze medal. What were your thoughts on Mason?
Yeah, well, he was definitely ready to go, because if you know anything about the USA team, I think the top 3 qualifiers are part of the team. They train, they're part of the group. So he's been going since day one. There was a great documentary on Kyle Dake when he thought he was going to get the spot over Jordan Burroughs many years ago. I think it was at the World Championships when Jordan had the busted up injury. So these guys are always prepared to go. But regardless, you're absolutely right. To come off the sidelines after basically with 2-week notice, and to be able to have this kind of tournament, and 125 is a deep weight class. This is a tough weight class.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back to the Olympics, let's be honest, the 11-second T-shirt, okay. Gable wasn't supposed to win that medal. He was down 4 or 5 points with very little time. It was just his miracle magic that did it. So this is no joke of a weight class. So for him to win the bronze, I think that is a great look for USA Wrestling. And I also want to say, I think, and listen, I don't want to get too controversial here, but I don't know what's going on with Stevenson. I don't know if it's a WWE reclassification, if he's got some other personal stuff going on. I don't know what the situation is. Is he going to wrestle college? Is he not? I think this young man needs to decide what he wants to do for his life. And listen, it's not for me to tell him what to do, but I think I don't know. I think if Paris is going to be our guy, I'd like to know that and kind of move forward. And I just want to know what this guy's going to do or what's going on, because I thought it was a little for him to drop out as quick as he did. And I know something happened with WWE where he got pulled from one of the groups, and I think he's kind of in limbo. So I don't know what your thoughts with that, John, is.
Yeah,
what's going on there?
I think I know the frustration from you. I think the man has options. I think, who are we to tell him you need to decide?
Well, I'm not telling him what to do.
Just come out, make the team. If you make the team, you got the option, right? And I kind of think that you go through the process and you win the spot. It's up to you. The second guy, be ready, right? And I just think that it's his option. I do think Mason is coming along when you look at when they wrestled at the US Open to when they wrestled at Final X, and then Mason at the World Championships. I think there was a big progression there with him.
Yeah,
I can tell you that much. So I do think coming back to Paris, I almost would like to see Gable and Mason go at it. I think that's an interesting matchup. I think I think Mason has a good shot. I think that's like a 50-50 matchup, honestly. I think Mason has a shot to beat him. But I think at the end of the day, you win the spot, you got the options, right? If people don't like that, they need someone to take them out, You
see, here's my thought on this. This isn't, if I get engaged, I don't have the option to leave. I don't know. I think when you
people,
get something
you do up until the wedding. People done
of course,
it.
I get it. I'm just saying this is a big deal. Gable has, listen, go live your life, man. If you want to take 6 years off and come back, I'd love for him to do it. I just think once you get that spot, I think there's got to be a little respect there. Unless there's something else going along. I don't want to be, like I said, there could be something else going on that we don't know about. So I don't want to be too much of a dead horse. It was a little disappointing, but Paris made up for it because winning that bronze the way he did from the come, you're right. It makes us, again, I'm going to repeat myself. The depth of wrestling on this team is insane. Paris was our number 2 and the man went out and won a bronze medal. So good for him. Can we talk a little bit about, I'll throw it back to you. Let's just go back to 65 because I actually think Nick Lee didn't wrestle a bad tournament here. He took 7th. When you look at the loss he had, it wasn't a bad loss. He lost to Rahman, who ended up taking he took 5th. I thought he was going to get on the podium. All I hear about is, Yanni's the better at that weight class. Well, that same wrestler beat Yanni 13-8 to win the gold medal at last year's World. So to me, it wasn't a bad loss. It's just the way repertoire works. He wasn't able to come back to wrestle for bronze. I actually thought he had a good tournament. But again, we don't qualify 65. But why don't you just talk about the problem with USA Wrestling in 65?
I wish I had the answer because it seems like there's always a hammer there, right? And it seems like there's always like 4 or 5 guys there. And it's kind of odd. We just haven't had that level of success at that weight class as we do at the other ones. We'll see. I think at the end of the day, didn't qualify the weight. I think the weight's going to be qualified for the Olympics. Pan Am's, it'll get qualified. Whoever goes, it'll get qualified. But it'll get qualified. I think, like you said, that's a deep weight internationally. I don't think
Bahrain was even there.
If it worked out another way, he might have could have easily been in the finals. But it just is what it is. I think I'm not making too much of it. I just think that, any given day, I think a lot of these guys, except for, the David Taylor of the world, they could run into somebody early on. And the way that repertoire works, it's not like you get a full wrestle back. It's kind of
Yep.
like you lose in the quarters, a little bit of a tough noogies. And, you look at Kyle Snyder. He could have easily been out of the tournament too. After
We
that,
thought he was.
that would have looked a lot worse, right? If
Yep.
he, if he lost and then that happened where, he got tacked. So I think it's a little bit of the way the repertoire works. It would have been good to see him be able to wrestle back, not making too much out of it. They're going to qualify that weight, and it's going to be a battle at that weight to see who makes the team, right?
Yeah. So do you think 57, Zane Richards obviously lost early in the wrestler. He obviously had no shot coming back. So listen, not taking away from Richards, but same thing with Chance Marsteller. Do you see these guys, especially 57, because that is an Olympic weight? So I think he had a great Final X, he had a great run. Do you see him making the comeback? Who do you predict is going to come and take the spot at 57? Because I think that's I'll be honest with you, John, that's if we're going to do anything at Paris, okay. Because not to take a step back, if you take out the non-Olympic weights, we did good, but Russia, which I don't know what their situation is going to be, whether or not they're going to be allowed to compete. They had, I think, 3 or 4 Olympic qualifiers like us. If you take those 2 Olympic weights, we were good, but we weren't as dominant. I think we have to medal at 57. And
I agree.
65.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think there's like 5 guys that are battling for that spot. We're gonna have to see what happens. I don't know. Who knows if someone else was there, if they would have done better. I couldn't tell you. Like I said, Zane Richards' first world team. We're going to have to see how it plays out. I'm not, I don't know who's going to win that weight. There's a lot of guys, Lee coming back, Suriano, I think his Fix going down, right? What are these guys? Is Vito going down? Is Fix going down? How are they going to do going down? So there's a lot of question marks at that weight. I think we do got a lot of guys there. We're going to have to see how it plays out. Again, weight will get qualified. Well, I'm not worried about the weight not getting qualified. It will get qualified one way or the other. I honestly think, that's a funny thing because, Fix or Vito could challenge Zane to go to Pan Am's to qualify the weight. Yeah. What do you think about that situation? Do you think those guys are going to say, hey, I'm going to try to qualify the weight? What's your thought there?
Well, it's funny because you said we're going to qualify that rate. You mentioned Zane, which is why I'm happy he won this medal, because I think he needed that. We forget the upset he had at Pan America a couple of years ago. We didn't have a 65 weight class representative in the Olympics. In fact, I think Jordan Oliver had lost in the finals of the a year or two ago at the last chance tournament. So it's funny you should mention that, because nothing is a given in this sport. And if I'm one of these guys, I'm like, I want that spot, because it doesn't do you any good to wrestle in Final X if the USA hasn't qualified the weight class. So to me, it really depends on, do you want to just do the training? Do you want to go after it now? Do you want to worry about your weight cut now? There's a lot of thoughts that go into that. You're absolutely right. But nothing's a given, man, because it's happened to us just a couple of years ago where we took a tough loss. Zane got caught. And it happens to the best of everybody. Spencer Lee got caught. Okay. But to answer your question, I think somebody's going to go after 65 because there's blood in the water there.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how that happens. In one way, I'd like to see it. I think it'd be cool. It'd be another match for us to watch and us to talk about. I think these guys are individuals, a lot on the line. This is the Olympics. I personally think making the team is so tough that these guys are gonna. The smart thing to do, I think, is to sit out and to try to focus on your training and focus on the trials to make the team. I think that's what you're going to see these guys do. I'm going to be interested if someone throws their hat in the ring and say, yeah, I'm going to train for the spot and go to Pan Am's and try to make the team that way. But I'm interested to see what happens. If I were to guess, I think these guys are going to be just doing their training and their training camp to be the number one guy at the trials.
And I think if Nick Lee goes for Pan America, I think he's going to win it. Like I said, I don't think he had a bad tournament. I think that 7th place is luck of the draw, so to speak. So I'm not that concerned like you. I tend to agree. Last thing I want to point on is what I put as the kind of cool, and that's obviously Seabass. So if you want to talk about him for a minute, because obviously there's a couple of cool things that came out of it. One, and the usual, I'll save the words what I think of some of the people on the online boards, what they stuff with things they say, but a lot of chirping about how he got lucky. He was on the lower end of the bracket. Well, he beat a damn good wrestler in the semifinals.
Yeah.
And the style which he did it, to me, he earned that final appearance, and that is the most grittiest I've ever seen Seabass wrestle. To come back and to get that leg lace the way he did after getting the shot he did. That's an impressive wrestler that he took out. So from one, earn that gold that gold medal match. But talk to me about Micic, because there's another USA born wrestler who had, what a tournament did he have? These two guys are going to be in the Olympics. So we're sitting here talking about USA wrestling. Seabass and Micic, they're going to be representing their respective countries. I would say that Puerto Rico, I almost consider that part of the U.S. But yeah, why don't you talk about that a little bit, especially our boy Seabass in his performance.
One outstanding performance from Seabass. I was going nuts when he made the finals. I mean, that's a great performance. Like you said, that was typical. Just, the thing about Seabass is kind of like he's known for his heart and his, just pushing the pace. And that's how he won that match. That was amazing. Micic had a great tournament. He kind of won it, had a damn tough weight class and battled through and won that. I mean, you got two guys going to the Olympics. We don't have anyone in the U.S. at the Olympics. Yep. Again, hard to blame them. I don't know. It's so hard to make the team. Yep. Who knows if these guys would have made the team if they had to go through, go through that gauntlet. They could be sitting on the sideline. So I do think I get it. I would love to have everyone wrestling for America, but I get it. Good luck to them. Kudos to the Scarlet Knight Wrestling Club. Donnie Pritzloff, Buxton, those guys working with Seabass. Good for them to get that going, and great tournament by.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll talk about Scarlet Knights Wrestling Club. If you caught his interview afterwards, Seabass kind of made it clear that he's going to be stepping aside from competing pretty shortly. That's the impression I got. And he let it slip. He goes, I want to come coach with these guys. Yeah. He specifically mentioned Rutgers. So keeping on the Rutgers tip, it sounds like to me that, and listen, we were a little upset when Ashnall kind of decided to take a different road in life, which I totally understand. I think there's a lot into that. And I love that young man. But the thought of Seabass coming and being on the staff, I think is a really cool thing too. So I was almost as excited to hear that commitment than his performance. But
yeah, so good stuff. Let's talk about the ladies. I mean, this U.S. team, they're good. I mean, they did pretty much as good as the men did. They just Japan, just unbelievable. Japan had 6 out of 10 champs. So Japan versus the world, Japan would win. But you think about it, the women did well. Let's talk about Amity Lore, second world title. She's 20 years old. She's looking pretty unstoppable, unbelievable. Great tournament by her. What were your thoughts on the women?
Well, with especially with her Allure, that's her second gold, I think. And I know she's talking about maybe going down a weight class for Paris. So it's gonna be interesting to see what she does. And obviously, we had Blades on here earlier. So again, talking about the youth movement within women's wrestling and the depth we have there, she is leading the way with that young group of wrestlers we have coming up. And I think, listen, we had a good performance here. Japan is just, we talked about this. If you wrestle Japan in a duel, they'd win 5 of the 6 Olympic weight classes. I mean, it is what it is. They're that dominant. I always get bummed, and I don't think she was going to be the Japanese wrestler anyway, but when I think of Sarah Hildebrand, she's still yet to get that world title, and I feel like she's been around forever. She medals every year. She's got one of the meanest leg laces in wrestling, let alone not just women's, but across the board. So she gets another bronze. Obviously, Adeline Gray, who, for her to come back the way she did, we were talking about Blades, and Blades knocked her off at the World Team Trials. Then, Adeline Gray, just pure guts and emotion, comes back and wins it. She gets the bronze, but you wonder if she's at the tail end of her career. And if she is, we've got another, junior world medalist behind the ranks coming up there. So Helen Marolis, she took a bronze as well. So I think we've got a lot of our wrestlers who have been on this team for a while. So for me, the question is, at some point, I think we're going to see a change in the guard here. I just don't know when. I think these girls are all going to go, or women, I should say, excuse me, are going to be going for Paris. So I think we've got a really good squad to go into 2024. I think you might see some changes in some of these weights, especially when it jumps down to Olympic weight classes. And like I see where Allure's going to go. And Winchester, good for her being a finalist. I've loved her for a while. I think she's a great athlete, a great wrestler. I love her spunk, her perspective on life. I was really happy to see her get in there. And Kildy as well, getting at 65, getting the finals appearance. So yeah, just a really good showing. I mean, this is a solid team. It's not to the level of Japan, we know that, but I think these guys can make these ladies can make another deep run in Paris.
Yeah, I agree. And, Jennifer Page also gets the bronze. I mean,
Yep.
7 medals, that's pretty damn good. And when you look at some of the people you talked about, Adeline, her 9th medal, Helen, her 8th medal. I mean, these are people that have been around.
Legends.
Sarah Hildebrandt, it was her 5th medal. So a lot of medals for these women. Might be getting to the end, and we got a strong contingent coming up. I do think they're going to pass Japan at some point. The question is when. I think it is going to take a while, like 4, 5, 6, 7 years, but I think we'll eventually get there. Good things on the rise with the women. Yeah.
Yep. And I guess the last thing we'll end up, and I know we're going a little bit long here, is not much to say about the Greco. I think it's just the reality of where we are as a country and the way we are approached to the discipline. I can tell you, John, is someone who's got a young wrestler who's doing freestyle in the summer and going to the tournaments. Even the freestyle, sometimes you're only getting about 4 or 5 kids in the brackets. They're usually studs. That's the funny thing. You go to a freestyle tournament, Alex go to a freestyle tournament, and he'll get 2 state place winners back to back. It's like, my God. So it's not like a deep weight, but the ones where they're good. The problem is you don't see everyone wrestling Greco. A lot of these young wrestlers are concentrating on freestyle if they're not doing folk style. So I think it just, I don't have an answer for it. I think we're becoming dominant freestyle. I can live with it. Just not a popular discipline in the US. I'm not going to say it's boring because it has some of the most exciting throws, but I think people struggle to understand Greco. I think there's experienced wrestling fans who have trouble with freestyle scoring systems. So I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, though.
No, I agree with you, and don't have too much to add there. It just is what it is. Let's talk about the coaching change at Princeton. Joe Dubuque. What were your thoughts on that hiring? We had Joe on the show. Top New Jersey wrestler in the New Jersey state. What were your thoughts on that hiring right there?
I think it's a no-brainer. Obviously, when the big man moved over to the West Coast and took that job, I didn't have any doubt that he was going to get it. I think he's got an infectious attitude. I love his Jersey roots, obviously, being a national champion out in IU. But he's a Jersey guy through and through. I think he'll tell you that. I think he knows how to connect with young wrestlers in the area. I think he's a guy that people would want to wrestle for. And he's a fun guy. I mean, listen, the Princeton Rutgers wrestling matches have become very exciting. I really enjoy them. I care a lot more about Princeton than I do Rider in terms of the rivalry. I think that's a rivalry that I think is going to continue to grow. And I think keeping D at that spot and giving him the spot, I think it's just going to keep that going. So I'm happy for him. I think it's the right move. I think he's ready. And I think he's going to do good things at Princeton. I think they're going to be who they are. They are who they are, as they say. They're never going to be a trophy winner. I mean, you never know, but they're always going to pull in those solid Jersey, especially those guys from a lot of the top parochial schools. Are always going to get a good, solid class. They're going to graduate brilliant people. Are going to go and become very wealthy people. So Princeton wrestling has what it has, whether he's there or not. But I think it's a great hire. I think it's a home run. I'm happy for him.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I thought it too when you heard Ayers is moving on to Stanford. I was like, no brainer. But then you never know what could happen. But
or if he was going to go to Stanford with them, you never know.
Glory, he went there for a reason. and really just kind of had that upward trajectory right away, and ended with a national title, a couple time All-American, and then won that national title. A lot of that is Joe Dubuque, influence there. I'm sure everyone's going to say that, and just bringing these kids, and I really like his attitude. I like him fiery, even though I'm on the other side. I love that when the opposing coach is getting at it, and I think that's what you need to have a top program. And like you said, I think a lot of people are going to follow him over there, and I do think Princeton is going to continue to be what they are, and put All-Americans in there, have a good rivalry with Rutgers, and I think they're going to have a solid team coming for years to come.
Agreed. And I think the last thing we want to touch on is, and it's just such a silly topic, but I think we got to address it, and that's the gambling situation over at Iowa and Iowa State. Number of football players got busted. Obviously, the first name that dropped on the wrestling side was Big 12 champ Panero Johnson. That was earlier this summer, and now you see the reports coming out of Iowa, and this is. I can't think of a top program who's had a worst offseason than Iowa. Okay. From number one, swinging and missing. I mean, from what we heard, there was a lot of money on the table to try to bring athletes on NIL deals into Iowa, and they weren't closing anything this offseason. And to have the names, I mean, Cassiope, you had Brands to get basically suspended on their senior years, their careers might be over. And when you look at this, John, some of the stuff that got leaked, and I don't know what Brands was thinking. I'm not going to get into it, what he put on his Instagram and then wiped off. I mean, somebody's got to get to these young men, okay? And I know it's a different generation. Even, old men like ourselves can't stay off our phones sometimes, but someone's got to get in these kids' heads and stay off the rover, man. Put the phone down, okay? Why you would put incriminating stuff like that and put a post about how much you lost, as if, for a couple of $1,000, I'm not going to be able to wrestle. Well, you just incriminated yourself and that's out there. That's not going back. So I don't know. It's still a weird situation. It hits Iowa hard, and I don't know if Brands is going to be like from the coaching side. I don't know if this is anything that can maybe threaten him out there. I think you would think he's pretty solid in Iowa, but I just got to mention it because this is the kind of thing you look at, like, what are you doing? Like, you don't have control over this.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you to one extent, but the same time, it's like, I don't know. I don't know if the penalty fit the crime here.
Oh, it's silly. I agree.
I think silly. It's like, hey, you go and you sign something in college, but they tell you not to drink alcohol, right? What 19-year-old isn't drinking alcohol? Right. I do think that better, they shouldn't have done it. I think ending a career, ending a full season of eligibility, I think that was a little harsh. Kind of a bummer for Iowa. We're talking, and I'm not going to throw names out there other than, there was two that were kind of sent out, Tony Cassiope and Nelson Brands, who were, top 4 All-Americans last year. And then you got, a 3 other starters that were right at that next tier, that 9 to 15 level, that it looks like they're not going to be competing. So I think it was a big hit for them. I think the penalty didn't fit the crime. I think it's silly that you have so many agents going after this stuff that really, when you hear about the total dollars, they send it out there. Even Panero Johnson, they said the total dollars. This person bet $20,000, but the reality is they didn't bet $20,000. They threw $100 in and put $50 on this game. One loss.
That's the
right?
point.
And then they say what the total betting was, but that's not really. They really shelled out of pocket $300. And
John, that was my point with Nelson Brands when he put that. I think in the back of his mind he was trying to prove a point. You're really going to end my career over this, and I think he showed it was like literally. It was like. The way he explained it, not that I want to speak for the guy, but he had like those $300 bet, you get the first 300 and anything you get. And, I think he won like 2,000, but it was silly money. Okay.
Yeah.
But you got to be smarter than that. And I think if we haven't learned anything over this generation, is anything you say and do gets put out there is going to come back to bite you. And that's my point, John. I think we're kind of dancing around and kind of in a backwards way agreeing. I think this is stupid. When you think of, we talked about NIL, I think, earlier this summer, and when you think of some of the guys who've been suspended, the programs who've been suspended for like getting a cheeseburger, I mean, exaggerating a little bit for this silly stuff. Mm-hmm. And you got guys who are getting 7-figure NIL deals, NIL deals in football, wrestlers who are getting several $100,000 to wrestle basically half a season. Okay. And you're going to throw a kid out for gambling online. It was probably not, it could have been a pro football game. You don't know. No, it is silly. I'm just saying this generation has to learn that what they say, what they put out there, there's got to be a little discipline there because you are under a microscope. You do know the NCAA is such an awkward, weird, just questionable organization, how they handle things. And I think when you're the son of a high profile coach, I'm sorry, John, you got to be smarter. You got to be smarter. You just do. That's it.
Yeah. I'm just happy we didn't have these things when I was in college. I probably would have been in trouble, probably wouldn't have finished my career. But definitely. I agree with you. I do think though, let me tell you when
they're appealing though.
I was looking at Iowa's roster though. And I do think, when you look at this, I wouldn't panic if I was an Iowa fan. You know what? They got these 2 stud transfers from South Dakota State. I think these guys are going to be very legit for them, challenge to be in the top 3. They got a couple freshmen that I think the plan was to redshirt them. Ben Keeter at heavyweight, replacing Big Tone.
He's going to wrestle.
They got Gabe Arnold, at 174. Plan was to redshirt him. I do think Iowa, I think they're going to end up in the same spot. I think Iowa, when you look at where they're ranked now, they're ranked 8th without these freshmen ranked. And they got a lot of guys that are ranked like 13th. Ayala ranked 13th. He's someone that could, probably end up being an All-American this year. I do think Iowa has some cards in their hand. I'm going to predict it. I think Iowa's going to finish 2nd, same spot they would be with all these guys. I think they're going to end up making something happen. I do, have faith in the brands and that program. I do think Iowa's going to end up finishing 2nd in the country when all said and done.
See, that's
thing that would happen with if they had everybody plus some. No one's catching Penn State. But when you look at, they're ranked 8th, but the teams that are ranked 2nd, 3rd, they don't have that much more points than them. That a couple weight classes isn't going to swing that the other way. So I do.
No, I agree, and I don't think Michigan necessarily has the depth, or it's not you're right. This isn't going to necessarily change anything to where they're going to drop to 4 or 5. But let's be honest, the brands were going after it. I think they want to take Penn State out again. I think they weren't completely satisfied with the team championship they had a couple of years ago, especially losing a couple of the finals matches they did. It's almost as if they took 2nd, but they took 1st, if that makes any sense. I don't think So I think the brands really wants to take out Kale one year, and I think he went all in this year, and it didn't happen. That's the bottom line. Iowa does not wrestle for 2nd place. And unfortunately, that's all they've been the last, other than that 1 year, that's what they've been. So anyway.
No, I hear it. Well, hey, great show. Great having you on, Eric. We're going to get back to everybody. But hey, looking forward to the season. Season's coming along. We got some guests coming up. We're going to have some great guests coming on, and we'll talk to you guys later. Be sure to follow the show. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Spotify, and we'll see you later, guys.